This is part 8 of the Athol 644.5 Swivel Jaw, Swivel Base Vise Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 7, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be masking, then priming the parts. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be masking is the spindle. The only part we're going to be painting on the spindle is that meatball end point. So we're going to mask the main screw. Now I kind of messed up here because that section of the back side of the meatball there that faces into the vise, I should have masked it as well, but I didn't. I ended up having to sand the paint and the primer off of it later on, but it's not a big deal. Just if you're going to do this, make sure you mask all the areas that have metal on metal contact. So next we have the swivel base, and the inside area of the swivel base that the lock rides in, we're going to paint the inside of that. I don't know if it normally gets painted at the factory, but we're going to paint it because that area gets a lot of rust. So here we're just masking off the bore for that big screw that goes in the bottom. And then we're going to mask off those ways or beds or whatever you want to call them, the milled surfaces that the main body of the vise swivels on, rests on, and makes metal to metal contact. There's an inner one and an outer one. And I apologize in advance, anybody that's ever watched one of my masking videos. This is pretty much going to be the majority of this video. So if you're bored watching me lay down masking tape and then trim it, I apologize. So that bore in the center, and then those two beds or ways or whatever you want to call those milled surfaces are the only things that get masked on the base. Everything else is going to get primed and painted. Next we have the swivel jaw, and we're going to mask off the jaw insert first. And then we're going to mask off those sides that we cleaned up. So depending on how the jaws are mated to the vise, you can get some really unique, I don't know what you would call it, but you get kind of a unique display of the side of the jaw inserts in the jaw itself. Specifically, I'm thinking of like the older Colombian vises that have kind of a T-shaped jaw insert. But on this vise, not so much. Sorry for the head in the way. Here we're just masking the bottom of the swivel jaw, and this is where it meets with the top of the main body. And this is metal on metal contact. So of course it's not going to get any paint. And I'm sure somebody is thinking, well, why can't you paint it? You can paint it, but that's going to cause a lot of drag, and the paint's just going to be worn off of there from swiveling the jaw. So they don't come painted from the factory as far as I'm aware. It wouldn't make sense to paint something that's going to have metal on metal contact. Here I'm just inserting a silicone plug to close up that bore. That's the swivel jaw. Next, we're going to mask the dynamic jaw. And the main part of the slide, that long rectangle there, is going to get masked, as well as the milled portion of the bottom side of it, and the bore, and the jaw insert. And again, you don't want to paint that long portion there for the same reason. It's just going to get, the paint is going to cause it to bind up and not slide smoothly inside the vise body. But I've seen plenty of vices where people have painted that part, and you do you. Now when it comes to painting this, you can see there's surface rust on the inside, that long part. And so that's a pretty big opening inside there. And sometimes I don't even paint the inside of that. Sometimes I just apply primer and then let it go. And the primer should retard the rust to some extent. But we're going to go ahead and paint it. And if you're using spray paint, or depending on how you're going to apply your paint, you're going to get a lot of buildup up on the top of these milled surfaces that we're masking that are on the bottom of this piece. And you can just wipe that buildup away after you've filled or shot the interior of it. And that'll make more sense when we get to the priming and painting. So this is wax paper that I'm using, or baker's whatever paper. It's what I use. I like it. It works better than, for instance, paper towel is just going to get saturated and the paint will bleed through. And this stuff works really well. I've used it for years now. We're doing the same as far as the jaw insert in the sides of the jaw and masking those off. And that's the dynamic jaw. I think that took me like 30 minutes to do. You 2 minutes to watch. So here we have the main body of the vise. There's quite a bit that needs to get masked here. This is probably the most complicated piece to be masked. So you have these little, you can see I'm measuring them there. There are ways or beds or milling surfaces. And inside the body, they're on the sides, the bottom, and the top. And that slide that we were just masking for the dynamic jaws rests on them and runs up against them. Because of that, we don't want to paint those parts. We want everything to slide nicely once it's got lubrication on it. So we've got to mask all those parts. it's kind of a pain to get a piece of masking tape measured and placed on those things correctly. But anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Now the entire bottom surface there is milled, and it's going to swivel or spin on those milled parts that we had on the base. So we're not going to be painting the bottom of this at all. And it will get masked. And all of this is pretty common in just about, well, most of your vices. They're all going to have a similar inside cavity to this. So obviously this process is long and tedious, and that's why I said it's going to take up the majority of this video. But as a good friend of mine once said, the secret to a decent paint job is preparation. So here we're just masking off that bore that the swivel jaw rides in, and then the milled surface there that the swivel jaw pivots on. There's a little channel there that I'm trying to get the masking tape down inside. Obviously, the X-Acto knife makes this so much easier. And we've got some silicone plugs, so I'm going to plug up that screw hole that's in the bottom here. And my plugs are just a little bit too small, so I'm wrapping one of the plugs with some electrical tape and fitting it in there, giving it a nice tight fit. We've got that set screw that goes in from the side, so we need to plug it up. And here we are on the bottom. So this is just some 1/2 inch thick, like floor rubber mat. They kind of snap together. I use that a lot to do masking as well. Just cut it out to the size you need it and then force it in to the opening. And that is the base. Just making sure we've got everything. All right, so then we've got the spindle nut. And really, the only thing we've got to mask here is the 2 openings for the threads. Like so. Okay, so I'm going to be using this self-etching primer, sometimes referred to as metal etching primer, and that's the number there, 249322 from Rust-Oleum. It's pretty much the primer I use on all of my projects. I like it a lot. It works great. And for those of you that are not familiar, primer basically creates a base that the paint can adhere to. Some of your paints may say that they're paint and primer all in one, but even in those cases, I always use a primer. So here's what I was talking about, trying to get the inside area. You can see how thick the buildup is on the outside edge. Now, since none of that is going to get painted on the outside, it's all masked off, no big deal. But it does get kind of messy. And here we are with the swivel jaw. And since we've got that bottom portion masked, we can just flip it over and finish spraying it. And the spindle nut, I'm just going to spray the bottom here. Then I'm going to lay it on its side and let that cure for about 30 minutes, and then I'll come back and spray the rest of the nut. Similar situation here with the base. We'll spray the very bottom of the base, and then we'll come back after about 30 minutes and flip it over and spray the inside. And then here is the main body. So we'll shoot the very bottom of that weird little tongue that sticks out, and then we can shoot the rest of it. And that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you've got questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. I'll get to them as soon as I can. In the next video, we will be applying the paint and then assembling the vise. As always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.